Chapter 7. The Coming of the Troll. When the troll reached the very edge of twilight, the shimmering, shifting border where Elfland ends and our world begins, he paused for a heartbeat. Then, with a nimble hop and the grace of a creature born in magic, he skipped across the veil. But as soon as his feet touched the earth of the mortal world, he slowed. His steps grew cautious. His eyes darted left and right. He had never walked in these fields before, yet an ancient fear stirred inside him. The fear of dogs. Out from the twilight he slipped like a shadow, so quietly, so delicately, that no human eye saw his arrival. Unless, of course, someone had already been staring directly at the very place he appeared. Even then, they might have doubted what they saw. He crouched low in the grass, scanning the silent horizon, ears twitching, nose alert. Only when he was certain there were no barking beasts nearby did he step fully into the world of men. This troll, like all his kind, had never set foot in the realm beyond Elfland. And yet, the terror of dogs ran deep in him, so deep that it had crossed the barriers of worlds. It was not something he'd been taught. It was something he knew as surely as fire burns or the moon glows. Even in the safety of Elfland, whispers of dogs stirred unease in the hearts of those smaller than man. And here, in these strange fields under a different sky, that unease had become a sharp and urgent fear. Still clutching the enchanted scroll, the troll took a deep breath of unfamiliar air and began his strange and secret journey through the world he'd only heard of in stories. In the world of men, May had awakened the earth, and the fields before the troll shimmered in gold. Endless buttercups swayed gently in the warm breeze, their golden petals catching the sunlight like a sea of tiny lanterns. They stretched far and wide, a golden carpet threaded with the fresh brown of sprouting grasses. The troll paused. His wide, curious eyes sparkled with wonder. He had never seen such riches. Not treasures in a chest, but a treasure of color, of light, of life. The wealth of earth stunned him. Without thinking, he stepped forward into the yellow tide, and as he walked, the blooms brushed against his short legs, dusting his shins with gold. He marveled not just at the flowers, but at the soft earth, the clear blue sky, and the warmth of the sun so unlike the steady light of Elfland. He had only wandered a short way from the border of twilight when he stumbled upon a curious creature, a hare. The hare lay nestled in a patch of cozy grass, perfectly still, in that relaxed, meditative pose only hares seemed to master. He had no urgent business, only the slow passage of time and the occasional cloud to observe. The troll froze, watching. The hare, for his part, did absolutely nothing. He didn't twitch, didn't blink. His long ears were upright but calm, and his eyes, dark as polished stone, held no fear, no interest, only thought. A deep, ancient stillness radiated from him, the kind of quiet that belongs to creatures who have seen much and know the value of waiting. There they were, a tiny troll from a magical realm and a hare of the mortal fields, both quietly observing each other in the golden hush of May. When the troll spotted the hare, he skipped playfully closer, his tiny feet brushing through the golden buttercups. Then he flopped down right in front of the hare, legs folded beneath him, and looked up with wide, eager eyes. "Creature of the open fields," the troll asked politely, "can you show me the way to where the humans live?" The hare said nothing. He simply continued to stare into space, lost in thoughts known only to hares. Deep, ancient thoughts, possibly about carrots, possibly about clouds. The troll tilted his head, puzzled. "Hey, thing of the grass," he said again, a bit louder this time. "Where can I find the haunts of men?" Finally, with the slow dignity of one interrupted mid-philosophy, the hare stood up. But unlike the elegant creature he became, when bounding across fields, walking made him look rather absurd, like a bundle of legs awkwardly trying to remember how knees work. He waddled closer, his hindquarters towering comically over his head, and shoved his twitching nose right into the troll's face. His long whiskers flailed around like they had minds of their own. "Tell me the way," said the troll again, leaning back slightly from the intrusive snout, but holding his ground. When the hare finally realized that the troll didn't smell even remotely like a dog, no sharp scent of teeth, fur, or menace, he relaxed a little. The troll kept talking, his voice curious and musical, filled with the soft lilts of Elfland's tongue. But the hare, who knew only the whispers of wind and the language of leaves, didn't understand a word. So he did what hares do best when puzzled. He lay back down in the grass, nestled among the buttercups, and returned to thinking very deeply, as if the answers might float to him from the clouds or rise gently from the earth. Meanwhile, the troll kept chatting, undeterred, words falling like tiny bells into the spring air, hopeful that something somehow might make sense. Eventually, the troll grew tired of the hare's silent thinking and blank stares. With a mischievous grin spreading across his face, he suddenly sprang to his feet, threw his arms in the air, and shouted with all the force of his tiny lungs, "Dogs!" The word rang out like a thunderclap in the quiet meadow. Startled by his own outburst, the troll giggled, spun once in the buttercups, and dashed off, hopping wildly in whichever direction led farthest from Elfland, his laughter trailing behind him like petals in the breeze. The hare, though he didn't speak Elvish, didn't need a translator. The way the troll had shouted that dreaded word with such sudden urgency planted a cold seed of fear in his furry chest. He twitched his nose, gave the troll a long, disdainful look filled with ancient hare wisdom, then clumsily lolloped away from his cozy patch of grass, 3 legs moving with cautious rhythm, the 4th ready to drop and spring at the first real sign of danger. He stopped soon after, sat upright among the golden flowers, ears high and still, eyes scanning the horizon. He stared long in the direction the troll had vanished and began to think once more deeply than before. And by the time the hare was halfway through his pondering, the troll had already disappeared into the distance, his shout forgotten, his mischief spent, his path entirely uncertain. And soon, just beyond a thick green hedge, the sharp angles of a farmhouse peeked into view. Its slanted red-tiled roof held little windows that glinted in the sun like curious eyes. The troll tilted his head and whispered to himself, "A haunt of men." But some quiet flicker of ancient Elfland instinct stirred within him. It told him this wasn't the place. This wasn't where Princess Lyrazel had come. Still, curiosity tugged at his toes and he crept closer, eyes wide and sparkling as he spotted the flutter and cluck of chickens scratching at the earth. He crouched low in the buttercups, enchanted by the strange, noisy creatures. But just then, a dog saw him. A big, barrel-chested farmhound with a nose for trouble and no experience of trolls. Its reaction was instant. With a snarl of pure, shocked outrage, the dog barked once, a single sharp burst of disbelief. And then, without wasting another breath, it launched into the chase. The ground shook under the thundering paws of its charge. And the troll? He yelped, spun on his heel, and ran like wild lightning across the fields, his tiny feet barely touching the earth, his heart drumming faster than any drum of Elfland. The troll sprang forward, leaping and gliding through the buttercups like a stone skipping across water, light, quick, untouchable. It was as if he had borrowed the very grace of a swallow in flight, skimming just above the golden sea of flowers, riding low on the breeze. The dog, taken aback by this strange darting speed, veered into a wide arc behind him. His body tilted like a racing arrow, his mouth open but silent, his ears pinned back by the rush of wind trailing from his nose to the very tip of his wagging tail. The curve he ran was desperate, an attempt to intercept the troll before he could slip away entirely. But the troll was faster, smoother, almost dancing on air. He played with his speed now, teasing the chase, inhaling the fresh floral wind in long, joyful breaths as it poured over the fields of buttercups, never once looking back. It was a chase born of magic and instinct, one fierce and earthbound, the other light as moonlight on dew. The troll no longer thought of the dog. The fear that had sparked his run was gone, but the thrill of speed still burned in his chest like sunlight caught in a bottle. He kept running, not from danger now, but for the sheer joy of the wind rushing past his ears and the golden blur of flowers beneath his feet. So the strange chase went on, the troll chasing joy and the dog chasing duty. Then, just for fun, the troll pushed his feet together mid-leap and landed stiff-legged, bouncing forward onto his hands in a tumble. With a playful jerk of his arms, he flipped through the air again, spinning like a dancer caught in a gust of wind. He did it again and again, each spin more wild, more gleeful. as if the sky itself had wrapped around him and dared him to fly. The dog, watching this nonsense, only grew more insulted. That, whatever that was not how one should run through a proper field. It wasn't decent, it wasn't normal, but even in his canine outrage, the dog understood something deeply frustrating. He was never going to catch this absurd, flipping, impossible creature. With a huff, he slowed, turned, and trotted back toward the farmhouse. There, he found his master standing by the gate. The dog wagged his tail with all the force of pretend pride, as if to say, "Handled it." The farmer, fooled by the enthusiastic tail, gave him a hearty pat. He smiled, proud of his clever hound, and with that, the chase was forgotten. It was just as well that the farmer's dog had driven the troll off his land. Had the troll lingered even a little longer, he might have whispered some small secret of Elfland to the animals, and that would have changed everything. The cows might have refused to give milk on cloudy days. The hens might have started laying eggs shaped like stars, and the whole barn might have turned into a place where reason had no meaning. The farmer would have been left with nothing but confusion, and one loyal dog still convinced he'd done something heroic. Meanwhile, the troll bounded joyfully across the sea of buttercups, their golden petals brushing his knees like a blessing. The wind tousled his hair, and the sun warmed his back, and the world around him felt light, as though the rules of Earth were already starting to blur. Then, just ahead, rising like a flicker of moonlight from the flowers, stood a fox. His red fur shimmered, but his chest and chin were pale white, as if carved from frost. He stood facing the troll, still and sharp, like a question waiting to be asked. Curious, the troll padded closer, his head tilted with interest. But the fox did not flinch. He watched the troll approach with cool, unwavering eyes. Because a fox watches everything. Every leaf, every lie, every shimmer of magic that doesn't belong. The fox had returned not long ago to these dew-kissed fields after one of his silent night wanderings. The kind where he slinks through the shadows at the edge of things, right along the faint flickering border between our world and Elfland. Sometimes he even steps across, not fully, just enough to walk among the folds of twilight that blur the two realms. And it's from that thick, enchanted dusk that he carries a shimmer of Elfland with him. A glint in the eye, a silence in his paws, a kind of magic that clings like mist and never fully leaves. "Well now, no man's dog," said the troll with a grin. They knew the fox well in Elfland. They'd often seen him slipping like smoke along their shimmering borders. That's what they called him, no man's dog, for he belonged to no one and went where no man dared. "Well then, thing over the border," said the fox at last, his voice smooth and dry like rustling leaves. He understood the old language of trolls. "Are the haunts of men nearby?" the troll asked, his green eyes wide with curiosity, still shining with the wonder of new lands. The fox twitched his whiskers, curling his lip just a little. Like all clever liars, he paused before speaking, sometimes letting silence say more than words ever could. "Men live here and men live there," the fox finally said, his eyes sharp and calculating. "I want to find their haunts," the troll said, steady and curious. The fox cocked his head, a sly smile playing at the corner of his mouth. "And what would you want there?" he asked, voice low and smooth. "I carry a message from the king of Elfland," the troll answered proudly. The name stirred no fear in the fox, but a subtle shift of his eyes and tilt of his head betrayed a quiet respect, as if the name was both powerful and dangerous. "If it's a message, then their haunts lie over there." With a graceful sweep, the fox pointed his long, slender nose toward Earl, where shadows of human life flickered at the horizon. "How will I know when I arrive?" the troll asked, tilting his head. "By the smell," the fox said, eyes narrowing. "It's a great haunt of men, and the scent is foul, dreadful." "Thank you, no man's dog," said the troll, a rare show of gratitude. The fox hesitated, then muttered, "I'd never come near them except for one thing." He fell silent, eyes fixed on the distant fields. "But for what?" the troll pressed, eager. "For their poultry," whispered the fox gravely, as if naming a secret. "Goodbye, no man's dog," said the troll with a flip of his body, and like a shadow born of the wind, he sprang off toward Earl, his heart pounding with the thrill of his quest. Gliding lightly over the golden buttercups through the misty morning, the troll journeyed far across the fields. By afternoon, he had covered many miles, and as the sun dipped lower, he caught his first glimpse of Earl. Nestled deep in a wide hollow, the village revealed itself in quiet pieces, tall towers and crooked chimneys poking above the rim of the valley. Faint curls of smoke rose lazily into the soft, dreamy sky, melting into clouds like thoughts fading from memory. "The haunts of men," the troll murmured, his voice barely a whisper. He sank into the tall, whispering grasses at the edge of a gentle hill, folded his arms around his knees, and simply watched. Eyes wide with wonder, he took in this strange place where stone touched sky and smoke told stories to the wind. It was unlike anything he had ever seen in Elfland. After a while, the troll crept a little closer. He peered again at the cluster of rooftops and curling smoke. The sight didn't please him. The air smelled harsh, a strange sour mixture of cooking fires, sweat, and something he couldn't name. It bit his nose and made his brow wrinkle. Back in Elfland, he'd heard tales whispered under silver moons, legends of mankind's so-called wisdom. But standing there now, staring at the jumble of chimneys and cluttered homes, whatever respect those stories had sparked in his curious heart vanished like mist in the morning sun. He frowned, puzzled, as if searching for the wisdom in that mess of stone and smoke. Just then, a tiny figure appeared. A girl, no more than 4, barefoot on a narrow path cutting through the tall grass. She was on her way home to Earl, a ribbon in her hair catching the wind. The troll and the child locked eyes, both round-eyed, both still, as if the world had paused for them alone. "Hi," said the little girl softly. "Greetings, child of men," replied the troll, his voice deep and oddly musical. This time he didn't use the rough, grumbling tones of troll talk. Instead, he spoke in the flowing, ancient language of Elfland, a language he only used in the presence of the Elven King or on sacred occasions. Though trolls hardly ever used it among themselves, he knew it well. It carried the rhythm of moonlight and old magic, and when he spoke it, his voice sounded almost like a song caught in the wind. Long ago, in those quieter days, this very language was shared by both elves and men. The people of Earl still understood it. For back then, the world hadn't split into so many tongues, and the speech of wonder still lingered in the air between two realms. "What are you?" the little girl asked, her voice soft but curious, eyes wide as the evening sky. "A troll from Elfland," the troll replied, his words floating like wind through grass. "I figured," she said, nodding with the calm certainty only a child could carry. "Where are you heading, child of men?" the troll asked, his glowing eyes fixed gently on her. "To the houses," she said, pointing toward the rooftops nestled in the valley. "We don't want to go there," the troll said, frowning slightly at the smoke that curled above the chimneys. No, the girl agreed, hesitating now, looking back at him. "Come with me to Elfland," the troll offered, voice deep with wonder, like distant bells ringing in a forest. The child paused. She had heard whispers, stories of children who vanished into misty light, of soft music in the fields, of glowing places beyond the hills. Elves never left an empty space. They always left behind something that looked like the child, a changeling, enough to fool the world. No one ever really noticed they were gone. She thought about all that, the magic, the mystery, the wild beauty of Elfland. Then she remembered her home, and the jam roll her mother had made that very morning, still warm when sliced, strawberry filling, sugar dusted on top. "No," she said gently. "Why not?" the troll asked, leaning closer. "Because Mama made a jam roll today," she replied. And without another word, the little girl turned and walked down the path, her small boots brushing through tall grass. The troll watched her go, a little puzzled, a little amused. And had it not been for that one sweet, sticky, strawberry-filled jam roll, she might have vanished into Elfland forever. "Jam," the troll scoffed, wrinkling his mossy nose in disgust. The word tasted silly to him, soft and sticky, hardly worth forsaking wonders for. He turned his gaze inward to memories of Elfland, silver tarns cradled by ancient forests, their waters still and deep as secrets. Vast lily leaves floated like green moons, and from them rose towering blue lilies, glowing with elf light, their petals wide as a troll's shoulders, reaching up toward a sky that never truly darkened. For Jam, the child had refused all of that. He snorted in disbelief and shook his heavy head. But duty called him back. his mission from the king of Elfland, the parchment. He reached for it, still clutched tightly in his left hand, a little wrinkled now from being carried across meadows and clenched between teeth during somersaults through the buttercups. The Elf King's room, a message for his daughter. Was she here, hidden among these smoke-draped rooftops? Or were there more places where men dwelled beyond these? As the sun melted low into the hills and the sky turned the color of soft ash, the troll crept closer to the village, quiet as moss growing on stone, careful not to be seen, curious but cautious. He slid through the tall grass, hugging the shadows, his sharp ears tilted forward, listening for something, anything, that might hint at elven blood among the humans. And so, just as night began to lean in, the troll waited at the edge of the world of men, the scroll still in his grip, and the memory of blue lilies haunting his mind. Chapter 8. The Coming of the Rune. It was a golden May morning in the village of Earl. The sky was cloudless, the air smelled of blossoms, and the castle's old stones soaked up the warmth like they hadn't felt sun in months. Inside the nursery, where sunlight spilled across woven rugs and wooden toys lay scattered, the witch Zerundaril sat by the fire. Her fingers moved with patient care as she stirred a small pot hung above the flames, preparing a warm meal for the child. The scent of herbs and milk drifted gently through the room. The boy, now 3 years old, played near the hearth, bright-eyed, curious, and still nameless. His golden curls bobbed as he clutched a carved wooden horse, dragging it across the flagstones with quiet joy. And yet, in all these 3 years, Lyrazel, his mother from Elfland, had not yet given him a name, not out of forgetfulness, not out of neglect, but out of fear. A quiet, magical fear known only to those who have walked in twilight realms and danced with invisible powers. She would never say it aloud, but Lyrazel believed deep in her elven heart that if she spoke the boy's name, some jealous spirit of earth or wind lurking unseen might hear it, might claim it, might curse it. So she remained silent. But Alveric, the child's father, had grown restless with this silence. A man of earth, bound to its customs and logic, he insisted the boy be named, and soon, and the boy could bowl a hoop like no other child in Earl. But this was no ordinary toy. One misty night, when the moon rose pale and ringed with silver light, the old witch Zerundaril had climbed to the top of her ancient hill. There, under the whispering stars, she whispered spells forgotten by most of Earth and snatched the moon's glowing halo from the sky with her enchantments. By dawn, she had forged that shimmering light into a perfect circle, a hoop that shimmered faintly, even in daylight. Its edges held the softness of moonlight, yet it rolled with a strange, silent speed, like it remembered the sky it once belonged to. She also crafted him a rod, not of wood, but of thunderbolt iron, the cold black metal left behind where lightning once struck the hilltop. Smooth, strong, and alive with hidden energy, it was the perfect tool to keep the enchanted hoop spinning fast across castle floors and garden paths. And so the child ran laughing through the halls of Errol, chasing starlight and moon metal with every step, unaware that his toys were made of skyfire and sorcery. Now the little boy sat cross-legged on the warm wooden floor, waiting patiently for his breakfast. Golden light from the morning sun spilled into the nursery, but the room stayed cozy and untouched by the chill outside. Across the doorway shimmered a soft, invisible veil, a spell woven by Zerundaril with a single graceful sweep of her ebony wand. It wasn't flashy, but it was powerful. No rats dared scamper past it, no mice crept in corners, stray dogs couldn't wander through, and not even a bat could glide above it. The spell wrapped the nursery in quiet protection, warm and still like a mother's lullaby. Even the sleek old nursery cat, who sometimes vanished for days, would not step beyond its edge, as if the magic gently whispered, "Not now, not here." No lock ever forged by a blacksmith's hand could guard the room more faithfully than that simple flick of witchcraft. Suddenly, without warning, the troll came flipping right through the air, spinning like a leaf in a gust of wind. He somersaulted over the doorway, passed clean through the protective spell that shimmered across the threshold, and landed squarely on the floor, sitting upright, as if he'd done it 100 times before. The old wooden nursery clock, ticking loudly above the fireplace just a moment ago, gave a shudder and stopped dead. Silence fell. Time itself had paused, as if holding its breath. The troll wasn't just any visitor. He wore a charm of timelessness, twined like a delicate green bracelet made from enchanted grass, wrapped snugly around one thick finger. That tiny spell was the Elf King's gift, a protection from the ticking time of our world, where days run like rivers and years vanish like smoke. Without it, the troll would have withered away just walking through our fields. But the Elf King knew better. He had watched our years rush by like wild wind, counted 4 of them as he thundered down his gleaming brass steps and summoned the troll, sending him across worlds with the spell of time tied to his hand. "And what might this be?" Zerundaril said sharply, her eyes narrowing as she stared at the unexpected guest now sitting in her nursery. The troll, usually full of cheek and mischief, looked up and paused. There was something in the old witch's gaze that made even his playful heart skip a beat. He saw something ancient in her eyes, something deep and knowing, eyes that had once met the stare of the Elf King himself. He knew better than to joke now, so he straightened up slightly and played, as we say in these parts, his strongest card. "A message," he said solemnly, "from the King of Elfland." Zerundaril blinked slowly. "Is that so?" she murmured, voice unreadable. Then more softly, almost to herself, as if confirming something she had long expected, "Yes, yes, that would be for my lady. Of course, it was bound to come." The troll sat cross-legged on the wooden floor, turning the ancient parchment slowly between his fingers, the scroll that held the rune of the King of Elfland. Across the room, curled up in his small bed and waiting for breakfast, the little boy spotted the odd creature. His eyes lit up with curiosity. "Who are you?" he asked wide-eyed. "Where did you come from? What can you do?" The last question made the troll's ears perk up. Without saying a word, he leapt into action. He sprang across the nursery like a firework set loose, darting from the floor to the shelves, flipping through the air, tumbling off walls, bouncing like a shadow set free from gravity. He zipped around the room like a moth trapped in candlelight. The child clapped and laughed, his eyes full of wonder. The cat, however, was not amused. It arched its back, fur-puffed, hissing with every insult the feline world could muster. Zerundaril snapped up her ebon stick and muttered a charm to stop the troll from jumping, a proper binding spell. But it didn't work. The troll danced right through it, unaffected. Cups rattled, a spoon clattered to the floor. The witch's eyes burned, not just with magical fury, but with a very human fear for her beloved crockery. "Stop! My china!" she barked, waving her stick again. But the boy only screamed with joy, shouting, "Do it again!" And just when it seemed the chaos would never end, the troll suddenly froze mid-leap, landing on the balls of his feet with uncanny grace. His eyes widened as if remembering something ancient and urgent. The scroll, the message from Elfland. "Where is Princess Lyrazel?" the troll asked, his voice low but firm. Zerundaril didn't argue, didn't speak. She simply raised one thin, wrinkled finger and pointed toward the spiral staircase that led up to the princess's tower. She knew better than to interfere. No magic of hers could block or bend a message sent from the King of Elfland. But just as the troll turned to go, the door creaked open behind him. Lyrazel stepped into the room. She entered like moonlight slipping through clouds, calm, luminous, otherworldly. Her presence changed the very air. The troll, bold a moment ago, now felt the weight of centuries and beauty collide in front of him. All the mischief and wildness drained from his face. He dropped to one knee, eyes lowered, his voice caught in his throat. With both hands, he held out the scroll, the rune sealed with the ancient will of the King of Elfland. Lyrazel took it gently, her expression unreadable as she looked down at the fragile roll of parchment. Behind her, the child tugged at her dress, laughing, "Mama, make him jump again!" The cat sat frozen near a wooden box, tail twitching, eyes fixed on the troll like it was watching the stillness before a storm. And Zerundaril, the old witch who had seen many strange things, stood perfectly still, her ebon stick in hand, saying nothing at all. She too knew what this message meant, and what it might awaken. And then, as silence settled in the room, the troll's eyes drifted, not to the baby, not to the witch, but far beyond the stone walls of the castle. He was thinking of home, of the tarns of Elfland, still and glassy, their waters glowing weed green beneath a sky that never aged. He remembered the lilies, vast and silver blue, standing tall above the surface like ancient sentinels, never wilting, untouched by time. He saw again the deep forests where no clock ticked and the flowers bloomed in a forever spring, their fragrance thick with memory and magic. A soft ache curled in his chest. His mission on Earth was done, the rune delivered. Now the noise of this world, the shouting child, the hissing cat, the smell of cooked milk, all felt heavy, too loud, too real. He was tired of stone floors and ticking clocks, of gravity and dust. His heart, strange and wild as it was, longed for the quiet perfection of Elfland, where time slept and dreams breathed. For a heartbeat, the room froze in time. Only the child moved, arms flailing in delight, voice ringing out, "Again, again!" Lyrizel stood still, the scroll from Elfland glowing softly in her delicate hand, her eyes locked on the runes as if they whispered memories only she could hear. The troll remained kneeling, head bowed, his mischief quieted by the gravity of the moment. Zerundaril didn't move, her breath held in her chest like a spell unfinished. The cat, tail twitching, watched the troll with piercing eyes, every muscle tensed. Even the nursery clock above the hearth had fallen silent, as if time itself paused to listen. Then, movement. Lyrizel slowly lowered the scroll. The troll rose to his feet, eyes a little softer now. The witch sighed, not a sound of relief but of inevitability. The cat blinked and relaxed her stance, and the troll, as if remembering who and what he truly was, gave one quick glance to the boy and then turned. Ignoring the child's laughter and pleas for more tricks, he darted to the spiral staircase, his small feet padding swiftly down each stone step. At the bottom, he slipped through a narrow door and into the world beyond, back towards Elfland. And just as his shadow crossed the threshold, the wooden nursery clock ticked again. Time had resumed. Lyrizel stared at the scroll in her hand, then turned her gaze to her little boy, his face still glowing with laughter, full of Earth's warmth and wonder. She didn't unroll the parchment. Silently, almost like drifting through a dream she didn't want to wake from, she turned away and walked out of the nursery. Her footsteps echoed faintly along the stone hallway until she reached her chamber, the one place that still felt entirely hers. There she opened a carved wooden casket, its hinges creaking softly like they remembered secrets long buried. Gently, she placed the scroll inside, shut the lid, and turned the key. She left it locked, unread, because her heart knew, even without opening it, that her father's most powerful rune was written on that scroll. The very spell she had feared the night she ran from his shimmering tower. The same spell that had shaken the brass stairs beneath his heavy steps as he rose in anger. That spell had now crossed into the world of men, wrapped inside that quiet roll of parchment, and if she dared open it, even for a glance, the words would awaken, and the magic would know her, and it would take her back before she could say goodbye. Once the rune was locked away safely in the wooden casket, silent, sealed, forgotten for now, Lyrizel left her chamber with the weight of unspoken danger pressing on her chest. She needed to speak to Alveric, to warn him about the magic that had nearly reached her, about the power her father had sent across the twilight border. But as soon as she found him, Alveric's eyes were clouded with his own concern. "Why won't you name our son?" he asked sharply, as though this question had been simmering for days. Lyrizel paused. Then in a soft, distant voice, one that carried winds from far-off enchanted woods, she whispered a name no mouth in this mortal land could shape. It was not of these fields or valleys, but born from Elfland itself, woven from starlight, shaped like a bird's cry echoing through moonlit trees. Beautiful, unreachable. Alveric frowned. "That isn't a name," he said. "It means nothing here." But it meant everything to her. This strange, delicate name, just like all her other whims, came not from tradition, nor from anything the people of Earl could understand. It came from the soft shimmer of Elfland's meadows, from dreams that humans never dream, from a place where customs had no meaning. And Alveric, raised in the stone halls of Earl where everything had order and lineage, was growing tired of her strangeness. He didn't know how to interpret her ways, No one did. There were no wise elders in Earl who could explain her, no advice that could guide him through the wild magic she carried in her soul. He wanted her to act like the women of Earl, grounded, practical, obedient to old customs, but Lyrazel was waiting for a whisper of wind from the southeast, for a vision, for wonder. He tried to reason with her, carefully, gently, with the solid weight of human logic. But she didn't want logic. And so, when they parted, she never told him what she had come to say, that danger from her homeland had crossed into their world, wrapped in the scroll of a king, that Elfland had reached for her again. And now, he didn't even know. Instead of returning to Alveric, Lyrazel climbed the quiet stairs to her tower. There, in the golden hush of late evening, the casket still gleamed softly, catching the last flickers of sunlight as if it held some secret flame. She stood before it, hesitated, turned away, then glanced back again, drawn to it as if it whispered her name. Outside, the sun slipped beneath the fields and dusk began to bloom, a violet veil spreading gently across the land. Shadows stretched long, and soon, everything shimmered into twilight stillness. Lyrazel sat by the open window, facing the distant hills in the east. The wind stirred her silver hair as she watched the stars awaken, one by one, like tiny lanterns being lit by unseen hands across the sky. She watched them for so long that their position slowly shifted, gliding silently across the heavens. In all the time she had lived in this strange human world, nothing had filled her with such quiet wonder as the stars. They reminded her of Elfland, of things eternal, untouched, and full of mystery. She loved them deeply. Their calm beauty spoke to something ancient in her, and yet as her gaze lingered, her heart grew heavy. Alveric had once told her she must not worship them, and so she watched them now with longing in her eyes and sadness in her soul, a soul still pulled between two worlds and belonging fully to neither. But how could she honor them, the stars, if she was not allowed to worship them? How could she thank them for their beauty, their silence, their endless glow that soothed her heart when nothing else could? How could she show her awe, her wonder, her quiet praise? As these thoughts swirled inside her like soft wind in the treetops, her eyes drifted once more across the sky. And then she saw him, Orion, the hunter with the shining belt, standing bold and bright among the stars. And in that moment, everything stilled. She thought of her baby, her child born of Elfland and Earth, a soul too wild for one, too fragile for the other. Her love for him surged like a rising tide, and all doubts faded. With soft defiance in her heart, Lyrazel lifted her gaze to Orion, those radiant stars she was told she must never revere. And yet she did, silently, boldly, beautifully. She gave her child to the night sky in spirit, not as a sacrifice, but as a blessing. She named him Orion, after that glowing constellation, as a quiet act of reverence, a gift to the stars, and a promise to the beauty that Earth could never truly own. Later that evening, Alveric climbed the winding stairs to her tower. She turned to him with soft eyes and gently shared her wish that their son be named Orion, after the stars she so dearly loved. To her surprise, Alveric agreed. The name struck something in him, a strength, a wildness, a hunter's pride. And in their valley, where hunting was honored, Orion sounded noble, strong, fitting. Hope stirred again in Alveric's heart like the faint glow of embers trying to reignite. He thought, perhaps now she'll let go of her strange fancies, these whispers from Elfland. Perhaps now, finally, she'll live as we do, think as we think, believe what we believe. With that quiet hope, he asked her once more, softly yet expectantly, to give her heart to the sacred customs of their land, to honor the holy things of the freer. But she only looked at him with that same faraway wonder in her eyes. She had never bowed to the freer, had never touched the bell or candlestick with reverence. She didn't know which was considered holier, and no matter how many times Alveric tried to explain, she couldn't understand, or perhaps she simply wouldn't. Her soul had crossed too far beyond the border of Elfland, and some part of her still danced in moonlight no one else could see. She smiled at him gently, her voice light like the breeze through morning leaves, and for a moment Alveric believed all was well. He thought her heart was finally rooted in their world, calm, content, his. But her thoughts had already drifted far, carried like petals on a stream, flowing always toward Orion, their sun, her silent star. Serious matters, heavy things of earth, never held her for long. Her mind danced away from them like butterflies flitting briefly through shadows, never resting, never caught. And all through that quiet night, beneath the hush of twilight and starlight, the ancient casket stayed shut, sealed tight around the rune of the King of Elfland. It lay untouched in the tower's silence, glowing faintly in the moonlight, waiting, as though time itself dared not wake what slept within. The next morning, Lyrazel barely thought of the hidden rune. Her heart was lighter, her thoughts filled with her son. Together, she and Alveric carried the child to the holy place of the Freyr, a quiet stone chapel, bathed in the soft gold of morning light. Zerundarel walked with them, but lingered outside beneath the old trees, her eyes watchful, her hands folded. Villagers came too, as many as could leave their work in the fields. Their boots muddy, their clothes simple, but their hearts curious and proud. These were the same folk who had once stood in the long red room, speaking to Alveric's father in grave voices. Now they gathered again, whispering among themselves as they saw the child. They saw strength in his eyes, a strange certainty in his small form, and they murmured quietly, believing this day to be the fulfillment of all they had hoped. Within the cool hush of the chapel, among flickering candles and time-worn stone, the Freyr stepped forward. His robes brushed the sacred floor, and his hands were raised with quiet authority. Looking at the boy, radiant with the innocence and mystery of Elfland, he hesitated. In truth, he would have preferred a name blessed by familiar saints, something grounded, something safe. But still, with a voice both cautious and awed, he spoke the name, Orion. And as the sound echoed through the stone hall, the Freyr felt something stir, not just in the child, but in the air itself. He smiled despite himself, for he too had watched the rise and fall of Earl's ancient family, like one watches the seasons pass across an old, familiar tree. And now, a new branch had sprouted, wild, bright, and full of stars. The Freyr gave a respectful bow to Alveric and turned with practiced grace toward Lyrazel. His words to her were polite, smooth as polished stone, but hollow. For though she was a princess from another world, he regarded her no higher than a mermaid who had abandoned her ocean for the land, beautiful, strange, and slightly misplaced. And so, with solemn ritual and uneasy hearts, the child was named Orion. When the ceremony was over, and the family stepped out from the chapel into the gentle warmth of day, the villagers broke into quiet smiles. They watched the young boy in his mother's arms, the boy of prophecy, of Elfland blood, and they felt hope bloom like spring in their tired fields. Lyrazel's gaze met Zerundarel's at the garden's edge, and the nursemaid stepped forward with a calm smile. Together they all walked back, Alveric tall and proud, Lyrazel serene yet distant, Zerundarel watchful as ever, and Orion in his father's arms, still too small to understand the weight his name now carried. The wind whispered through the grass beside them. Somewhere far off, the bells of the chapel faded into silence, as though the land itself was holding its breath. And so the boy named after stars returned to the castle of stone, with a future still unwritten, but already shimmering on the horizon. That whole day, Lyrazel lived like someone from this world. She followed the customs of the valley without hesitation, moved through its rhythms like she belonged. Nothing she did drew curious glances. No odd gestures, no strange silences, no whisper of Elfland's magic clinging to her steps. But when night fell, and the sky unfolded its velvet cloak scattered with stars, her heart stirred. The moment she saw Orion rising above the hills, shining bold and bright, something inside her ached, a quiet, glowing ache. She felt gratitude swelling in her chest, aching to be released. Thankfulness for Orion's beauty that lit up the dark like a lantern over the earth, and for the invisible protection she believed he cast over her son, keeping him safe from unseen jealous spirits that might still wander too close. The feeling grew so strong, so urgent, that she could no longer contain it. Without a word, she left her tower and stepped barefoot into the quiet of the open night. Above her, The stars shimmered like distant flames, Orion blazing among them like a watchful guardian. She tilted her face upward, her lips parted to speak, to whisper a prayer. But the memory of Alveric's voice stopped her. "You must not pray to the stars," he had said. "It is not our way." So she stood there, silent under the ancient sky, the weight of her unspoken thanks trembling on her lips. And then her eyes lowered, catching the glint of a small, still pool nearby. In its dark mirror, the stars flickered, soft, dreamlike reflections floating gently on the water's skin. "They are only reflections," she whispered to herself, a gentle rebellion blooming in her chest. Not the stars themselves. Her eyes shone as she stepped closer, her voice a hush against the night. "Then I will pray to their reflections, and the stars will understand." She knelt gently at the edge of the pool, hidden among the tall, whispering leaves of the irises. Her gown brushed the earth, and her golden hair caught the moonlight like threads of stardust. With hands folded close to her heart, Lyrizel bowed her head and let her soul speak, not to the stars themselves, but to their shimmering reflections dancing softly in the still water. She gave thanks for the night, for its silence, its beauty, for the way the stars had bloomed above her like 1,000 lanterns of peace. Her heart lifted as she imagined the constellations not as distant fires, but as celestial warriors wrapped in silver armor, crossing the sky like an army of light, victorious, eternal, noble. Among them, Orion, her silent protector, burned brightest. She whispered her praise into the pool, voice as fragile as the breeze, asking the reflections to carry her gratitude skyward to the one she could not pray to directly. "Tell him," she said softly, eyes shining. "Tell him I see him, tell him I am thankful." And in that tender moment, wrapped in starlight and longing, Alveric found her. His footsteps broke the stillness like thunder. He stood over her, a tall shadow against the stars. His voice cut the hush. "You're worshiping the stars," he said harshly, anger and confusion tangled in his words. "That's not what they're for. That's not our way." Lyrizel looked up, her face calm, her voice unwavering. "No," she answered gently. "I only prayed to their reflections. That is not the same." It wasn't hard to understand Alveric's frustration. Everything about Lyrizel, her otherworldly grace, her unpredictable choices, her quiet rebellion against every rule and ritual, clashed with the life he had always known. She moved through their world like a dream misplaced, strange and wondrous, yet unaware of the invisible rules everyone else obeyed without thinking. Each day, her innocence brushed up against the tightly woven customs of the kingdom, and every time it stung. She didn't mean to offend, but the way she spoke, the things she did, the wonder in her eyes at the simplest traditions, all of it jarred against centuries of unspoken understanding, the kind of legacy that runs deep in castles like theirs. And perhaps that was the hardest part for Alveric to accept. The very magic that had made her so enchanting in the tales, that legendary beauty from beyond the veil of Elfland, now made her a misfit in the role once filled by wise worldly women who knew the names of every herb, the timing of every harvest, and the meanings behind every feast and symbol. He had hoped she'd learn, hoped she'd blend in, hoped she'd become what the castle expected of her. But to Lyrizel, those expectations were as unfamiliar and far away as the stars that blinked in the sky. Lovely to look at, but never truly hers. But Lyrizel could only feel that the stars were being wronged. To her, their brilliance deserved more than silent glances. They deserved gratitude, reverence, something deeper than routine admiration. And yet even she hadn't truly thanked them, only whispered her awe to their reflections in a still pool, not daring to speak to the stars themselves, not directly. That night, as she sat alone, the memories of Elfland stirred gently within her heart, like petals opening in moonlight. She thought of that timeless realm, where beauty walked beside her in perfect harmony, where nothing ever aged or shifted, and where no one questioned her nature. There were no confusing rules, no invisible boundaries, no punishments for wonder, no stars that shone so fiercely yet went unpraised. She longed for the soft glow of the elfin meadows, the endless blooms rising like waves beneath skies of eternal twilight, and the shimmering palace, the one that no human words could describe, only music could ever hint at. And far away in the tower where she had left it, The rune, etched with magic from the king of Elfland, lay locked in its dark casket, still waiting, silent, patient. Its moment had not yet come.